Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to A Turn of Events, where we help put a positive spin on the future of your business. I'm Annette Naif, the founder and creative director of Naif Productions. We are a strategic wedding and event production company. We specialize in corporate, social, nonprofit, and weddings. Very excited to have you here today. Also, if you are a wedding or event planner and you're looking to start your own business, join us over at our Facebook group, which is Event Planner Society. Again, our Facebook group is Event Planner Society. We would love to have you. Lots of collaboration going on. I teach a lot. Just so many great people over there where you can collaborate with. So join us at Event Planner Society. So my next guest, which is really, really awesome, is Braden Drake. We're going to talk about navigating legal and tax matters in the wedding and event industry. Probably not the sexiest topic, but very, very, very important. If you don't have your legal stuff in order, you're going to be in big trouble. So, Braden is a California licensed attorney and tax professional. His tagline is your gay best friend here to help you get your legal, tax, and financial shit legit. Braden works primarily with online and creative small business owners through his law firm, the Not Your Average Law Firm, and his online programs and mentorship. Braden, I'm very excited to have you here today.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. It looks like you, like myself, are also surviving the cold freezes that are going across. Are you in
Yes,
Florida? Where are you?
I am. I'm in Boca.
Yeah, okay. I knew my sister lives in Palm Beach County. I'm
Oh,
in
no.
San Diego, so we're, struggling with like a 55-degree weather here.
Yeah, I'm sorry for you. And I'm sure all my friends up north in the East are giving you the finger right now.
Oh
So,
yeah, no sympathy. I'm from Indiana, so I
yeah.
I get it. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
cold.
I'm originally from Michigan, so,
Yeah.
I grew up in some brutal winters. I lived in LA for 17 years, and then I moved to New York. I've been in New York half of the year, so I'm a snowbird, as they call us.
Yeah.
So I've been in New York half the year, which is really fantastic, and I've been there 24 years. Holy moly, I can't believe it's been that long. It's crazy. But
Well, fun.
so yeah, so I'm excited to talk to you. So yes, I myself I was in the LA area. So
Uh-huh.
which I can appreciate great weather. So I don't like it anymore that much. And it's a brutal winter, it sounds like this year. So
Yes,
my
yeah.
friends are all complaining. Sorry, you guys. Anyway, all right, so let's get started. So what type of legal first of all, tell me a little bit about you. How did you, get into doing legal work for the entertainment industry or, events? And I used to do actually law for entertainment,
Oh,
out in
nice.
so I have that legal background, which is great. But how did you get into helping the wedding and event industry?
Yeah, so it was kind of a roundabout journey, but the short story is I was working at West Elm, the like retail furniture
Uh-huh.
company, when I was studying for the bar exam and for the first year of my business. And at that point, I didn't really know what niche I wanted to serve. I started working with interior designers a little bit because I was meeting them at work. But we had pop up shops at West Elm every weekend, and I would always chit chat a lot with the creators who came in to sell their things,
Uh-huh.
and one of them told me about Rising Tide Society, if you're familiar, so I got
Yes.
introduced to that. I
Yes.
started speaking at the Rising Tide Society groups, and they tend to have a very, large presence in the wedding industry, and I just ended up getting tapped into the niche that way, and it's taken off from there. That
Awesome.
was in, like, 2017, 18.
Okay,
Yeah,
good, good, great. Yeah, I worked in film and television and legal. So I actually,
nice.
and then I came to New York and worked in music. So I used to work for EMI Music. So I've had all the entertainment background stuff. Music was brutal. Holy moly.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, it's a whole
What an
different set of legal
animal.
issues that we don't really have to
Yes,
worry
that's
about.
a whole animal in itself. All right. So, what type of legal structure is most suitable for my business as a wedding and event planner? It's people that are just getting started.
Yeah, well, when people Google these things, I think they see like a whole list of options. It gets pretty overwhelming, but really, there's only for most of us, there's really only like one that really need to look to. That's the LLC, right? So
Right.
when we start our businesses, we're by default a sole proprietorship. That's really the absence of having a legal entity. You have to proactively form an LLC. You could also do a corporation. We don't typically recommend that, but you form an LLC for liability protection reasons. And then once the business is making enough money to where it makes sense, it often is best to elect for your LLC to be taxed as an S corp so that
Mhm.
you can also save some taxes.
Yes, yes. So, what's the legal implications and benefits of each structure? So, we have like the sole proprietor, LLC, corporations. What
Yeah.
are those benefits?
Well, the benefit is that once you form, I call them a formal entity. So a sole proprietorship is not really, like I mentioned, it's the absence of a legal entity. So it provides no separation between you and your business.
Right.
Once you do form a formal entity, there's separation there. So if you're ever sued or have legal issues, those shield your personal assets from being at risk in a lawsuit. So, for example, if someone sued you and the business didn't have enough money to pay out the lawsuit, they could force you to liquidate your assets, sell your home, cash out your 401k, whatever, if you don't have that shield of protection there. So, really, any formal entity, LLC, corporation, they all provide that same protection. So then it comes down to like kind of other legal and tax questions as when you determine which one you want.
Mhm.
Corporations generally, we only do those if you eventually wanna, like, trade stock or if you're gonna have, like, a lot of employees, like a big company. It doesn't really make sense for most of us small businesses.
Right. And what about the sole proprietorship? Are you still protected if you do that?
No. No. Nope. No
Yeah,
liability protection, because the sole proprietorship is just another way of saying that you and your business are the same, so there's no legal separation.
right, exactly. And so another thing is, so I know when I've had like 5 different names for my business over the years. I'm
Uh-huh.
now Naif Productions and will always be that. But when you get started, you pick something and that you're not really sure, and then it gets, along the way I've changed. I partnered with someone a long time ago and then got out of that and changed. So I've had some changes along the way. But I had my LLC, which I think at the time was Annette Naif Events. I think that's what it was like way back. And but I wanted to take my name off. Although I use my last name, but I want to take my full name off. So, but I did a DBA. So can you talk a little bit about how that works?
Yeah, so a DBA is really just it's a fictitious business license is usually what you're applying for. And it's a DBA is just an acronym for doing business as. It means that you're operating as a name different from your legal name. So when you're a sole proprietorship, like Braden Drake, the human person, if I'm operating as the not your average law firm in a sole proprietorship, I would need to get a fictitious business license for that because I'm Braden Drake doing business as the not your average law firm. However, if you are an LLC, like let's say I'm not your average law firm LLC, then my operating name is the same as my legal name because the
Mhm.
LLC is the legal entity. You would only need to get a fictitious business license if you're then operating under a name different from your LLC name. That's kind of
Yeah.
complicated. A lot of people don't really get that.
Yeah, yeah. But you really need to have the LLC in order to do a DBA. That's probably the best way to do that, right?
Well, yes and no. No, not really, because if you are, like I mentioned before, if you don't have an LLC and you're just operating as a sole proprietor, then you can get a DBA for your business name. But for the liability protection, we do recommend the LLC. So it's kind of
Right.
separate issues.
Liabilities. Yes, it is separate. Okay, so what kind of contracts or agreements do I need for clients, vendors, partners, things like that?
Well, the biggest one is your client. We typically call them client service agreements. Some industries will call them engagement letters, lots of different names for them. But the client between you as a service provider and your client, that's
Mhm.
the number one contract. That has to cover everything. Um, so that's a big one. If you ever work with independent contractors, you're hiring assistants, you need to have contracts for that. You need to have website terms of service and website privacy policies, which is important. When you have an LLC, you need to have an operating agreement. There are lots of contracts you ideally need in your business.
Yes, yes, I know. We have a whole file of them, folder of them. And if you hire contractors, okay, so you don't have employees, but you have all the people that work for you are 1099s. Do you need to sign any kind of contract with them?
Yes, yes. So, first of all, before we get too far down the road, I want to give a little bit of a plug if people are not already familiar. We have I'm going to call it, for lack of a better term, program. It's called the Contract Club.
Mhm.
It's $30 and we have access to all these contracts we're talking about in there. It's not $30 a month, it's just $30, which is
Wow.
incredible.
That's
Yeah,
that's
we've
ex
had like 1,700 people join so far. Check it out. It's amazing.
yeah.
Um, so join the contract club. Yes, when you are hiring any kind of contractors, you should have them sign an agreement. So I think we're going to get into this later, but there's this whole can of worms about whether someone legally can be a contractor versus whether
Yes.
they should be an employee. In some states like California, we have very, very strict laws around this.
Mhm.
And if
New
they
York.
are allowed to be contractors, then some of our laws actually legally require there to be a contract in place. So it might be required by your state in addition to just being best practices because the contract lays out when the contractor is getting paid, whether
Yeah.
they can market their own businesses, all sorts of stuff.
Right, right. Okay. So, what kind of liability should I be aware of when organizing events?
Oh boy. Well, there's lots of liability, right? So you have like general liability if you the example I always give, which is kind of silly. I don't know if anyone would ever do this, but maybe you're helping set up sound or something. Like you got the DJ and you string a cord like across, I don't know if this would ever even happen in a wedding, but you string like some kind of cord like across the aisle. Like, and imagine
Right.
brides walking down the aisle,
Yeah.
slips, falls, breaks her nose. Like that's kind of an extreme example. But you
Yeah.
can come up with like all sorts of other examples. Maybe you're helping set up tables and chairs and you put it like on an unstable area. Anything that could lead to injury, right?
Mhm.
That's potential liability. And then you have liabilities of, well, did you forget to respond to a vendor? And now all of a sudden, like they're not going to be there like during the event day. And now your client wants to hold you liable for that. They have to go hire someone last minute who's going to charge them more. There's liability involved there. Really, anything that could be constituted as a mistake on your part can lead to liability.
Yeah, that's a scary, scary place to be. But so how do you so you have a professional coverage, right? So let's say you need insurance,
Yeah.
you need a professional protection, right? And professional and liability, right? So you need both.
Yeah. Yeah, I have learned so I always try to explain the difference between general liability insurance policies and professional liability insurance policies. And I have now learned from my insurance agent friend that I always explain it wrong because lawyers define
Always.
professional liability differently from the way insurance companies do. At the end of the
Yeah,
day, it's kind of semantics to us. It doesn't really matter, but this is
right.
why, well, it does matter, but this is why you need to talk to your insurance agent about what kind of insurance you need. What I always tell people is you have to have, I call them the layers of protection. So insurance, contracts, business entity, those are your three main layers. You need to have all three of them. And then the bigger your company is, the bigger events you're doing, the more expensive events.
Mhm.
The like really the more insurance you need because you have to start to get insured for more things.
Yeah. So how do you protect your business from legal disputes through contracts?
Well, your contract needs to be very thorough. So it needs to cover a lot of the what if scenarios, right? So what if the client doesn't pay me on time? What if I don't fulfill my end of the bargain? We have force majeure clauses now, which everyone knows about after 2020. So not only what happens like if there is another pandemic or a natural disaster, but how does that impact changing your date and substituting the services? Are you going to charge for that? Is there additional fee? We need to account for all of those things in our contract. That's
Yeah.
why our wedding planning contract that we provide through the contract club is like 15 pages and people find that very overwhelming, but it's because
Yeah.
we want to try to cover everything.
Mine is too. I know when I
Yeah.
started out, it was like 5 pages. It's now like 15. It's
Yeah,
grown
we see a
over the
lot
years.
of
It's a lot. Things happen.
yeah,
We're like, "Oh, we gotta add that to the contract," you know?
a 5-page contract can sometimes do the trick, but we've
Yeah.
seen, I'm using air quotes here, contracts that are only a page long,
Oh,
and
wow.
usually that's just a proposal. It's like a bullet
Yeah.
pointed proposal. It doesn't actually have legal language in it. The shortest contracts we ever really do are maybe like 3 to 4 pages, and often that's for, like, things like DJ services or more simple services where they're coming in for, like, a couple of hours, performing a very specific thing, and
Right.
there's not, unlike planning,
Yeah.
well, I don't wanna make any DJs mad, but, planners are working with you for, like, a full year,
A
and
year.
for a
Yeah.
DJ, it's maybe, like, 1 or 2 meetings,
Right.
whatever, and then you show up, you do the job, and you're done.
Right. Right. No, there's a lot that goes into it, obviously. A lot. It's a different animal. So, what responsibilities can be assigned to the clients in the contract to ensure a successful event?
Oh, well, I mean, you can do just about whatever you want whatever you want in a contract as far as responsibilities go, right? Like, a big thing that comes to my mind is we always have a communication clause. So, like, when can people contact you? Like, what are your
Right.
office hours and when do you generally respond to people by? But B, also telling the client, like, I can't really do my job if you don't properly communicate with me. So
That's a
I don't expect an email back from you within 5 minutes. But if I'm emailing you a question that impacts the planning process, I ideally would like a response in 24 to 48 hours, like at a minimum.
right. Right. So we do.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, communication is big, and then obviously payment is big. If they're paying you on time and they're answering all of their questions, that's typically, let me know if I'm missing anything, but that's typically like the client obligation.
Yeah, I mean, also when we're in the proposal stage and we're, talking about the event and there's things that they're going to provide that we're not going to do. So we always put an exhibit A with all of our services of what we're going to do at the back
Mhm.
of the agreement. If there's things that are specific that they're going to do, they're going to provide 5 volunteers at the event to help at
Yeah.
register, whatever, right? Because I do other things in weddings. We will put that in the contract, right? They're going to do specific things that are very outlined. Sometimes we have clients who are very specific, like just really get in. Others are just like, this is great. This is, we love what you're going to do, blah, blah, blah. So,
Yeah.
but we will put in what we're not going to do and what they're going to do. So, those are two different things sometimes as well. But we always, like to put in, those type of situations, if it, especially if it's come up in a conversation, um we will add that to it doesn't hurt to have it in there and just be
Yeah,
protected.
that makes a lot of sense, especially for, like, corporate clients and corporate events. Like,
Yep.
I don't know, if you're doing some kind of a corporate event that requires a lot of signage, like, I would imagine that the company, they might have their own in-house graphic designers and wanna retain control of all that kinda stuff.
Yes.
But then maybe they want, like, a balloon archway, so it's like, "We need the design files from
Yeah.
you, but then, like,
Yeah.
we'll
Well, I
execute
mean,
it," so that should all be in the contract.
I always want to make sure that we have our eyes on everything. So
Right.
if I show up and all the signage is wrong, it's going to look bad, right?
Right,
So
right, right.
we always want to make sure that we are consulting with them on what signage they need. I like to look at the copy. I like to review everything. So, because we are a strategic, we help with the strategy. We're not just getting in there and throwing linens on tables, right? So there is a lot more that goes into what we do, but so I always want to make sure, I have to make sure like who's on their team and who's going to be helping and do they have an in-house person, this, we have to make sure ahead of time, because if we don't know how many people are on their team, some things are going to fall on us, and that's not part of our scope of work. So
Right.
we have to make sure that we understand all aspects of their business, who's involved, who's going to be doing what, so that we're all really upfront from the beginning. So I'm not surprised of anything. I
Yeah.
don't like surprises.
Yeah, and then on the flip side, like, for the weddings, what we see is not always what the some of the client responsibilities are, but what the other vendor responsibilities are, right? So,
Yep.
we'll have in some of the contracts, like, client understands that planner will not be responsible for taking down tables and chairs and
Right.
bussing tables, and
Correct.
that they need to have a caterer and an event rental company, like, that kinda thing.
Yep.
Um, I actually had a kind of a personal story about this one because we went to a friend's wedding, and I still remember we were one of the last ones there because they were very close friends of ours. And everyone was like pretty tipsy at this point, not like irresponsibly so, but
Yeah.
they were having a good time.
Good time. Yeah.
And the bride and the bride's family was very upset. Not super upset, but they were annoyed because the wedding planner said, "You all have to come help us, like, clean all this stuff up." Because
Oh
I
my
think they
goodness.
well, because they hired them, I think just for, like, wedding coordination, right?
Yeah.
Um, but basically they were like, "It's not really our job to be here until 3 in the morning, like, cleaning all this up." And the couple was like, "Well, it's our wedding and we didn't wanna do that." It's kind of like, well,
Yeah, that should have been a discussion. Who's gonna be cleaning up? Yep,
right,
that's
right.
that's a
Yeah,
discussion ahead of time, and I think that just comes from experience. Unfortunately, the planner didn't think of that, but, you have to make sure that every little I mean, we have things in there for, like, we're not going to babysit any children, right?
yeah,
We're not
yeah,
we're not going to babysit the bridal party. We're not gonna watch your dog if your dog is in the wedding. We don't drive anybody around. We don't transport. We're not we if there's anything to do with like any of the food and beverage, we make sure that the catering does all that. We're there to manage and make sure it all comes together, but we're not going to put ourselves in a position. What if we drove someone and we got in an accident, right? So
yeah, yeah.
that's never a good idea.
Right.
So
So you have to hire a transportation company because they
yeah,
have insurance in case, that
correct.
kind
Like,
of stuff
each
happens.
one of my vendors needs to have insurance, which is important
Right,
for everyone out there listening, that you should make sure your vendors are all insured. And I don't usually like to have any of my clients bringing in like their buddy's a DJ, their best friend's a DJ, or my mom makes cakes, or it's always an issue if that happens, especially because it represents our company. And if the cake looks crappy or the flowers are horrible, or it always comes back on us, even though we didn't make the flowers or bring the flowers
right.
or do any of that. But it's still part of what represents our company. So we always want to make sure. I mean, cleanup is, the setup times, the cleanups, who's doing it. That's a big job, and I never
Yeah.
be
And I think
responsible.
a lot of that also comes down to, like, the scope of service you're providing, right? Because,
Yep.
if you are charging, like, a $10,000 planning fee and they're having, like, a multi six-figure wedding, then I think it's fine to say, "Well, no, you need to hire vendors to handle all this kinda stuff."
Right. Right. Right.
If you're one of these newer planners, which I think was the case at this wedding I went to, where they're probably
Yeah.
charging $1,000,
Yikes.
and
They
then,
shouldn't even be charging that.
I
That's
know,
way
right? But if you're
it
charging a couple $1,000 for, like,
it
wedding
damages our
management, and then
industry for sure.
yeah, and then the couple's, like, family and friends are the ones, like, they're doing all the centerpieces and doing their own florals and
Yeah.
doing this stuff, then I would understand, like, why you don't wanna be responsible for having to pack all that shit up, but it needs to be in your contract. You gotta talk to the couple about it.
Yep, yep, that's for sure. And I think it is the experience of knowing. That's why if you're just starting your business and you need a coach, you should always have a coach when you're first starting. I did as well. I mean, it was really, really important. I didn't know how to price my services or what contracts should I have and how do I speak to the client and all of that good stuff, and knowing what to ask for. You should always get a coach. So again, join us over at the Facebook group because we're doing all of that stuff over there. And I do
Yeah,
coach wedding and event planners. So love to help you out. But those are the things that can get you in trouble, is not knowing. And listen, we all started. I started too. I've been doing events for a long time, but there's always stuff that comes up that I'm like, oh my gosh, I never saw that before. And I'm just like, we got to add it to the contract. But
mhm,
just understanding that's what you're there for. And I mean, we get the bigger clients because we have the experience. And if you're not experienced and you're trying to take on bigger clients, just be aware that, you should probably bring someone in to consult with you to make sure you're not missing anything, because, that's really, really important. So, but yeah, we have lots of comments coming in here. Yep, as soon as I knew
definitely.
it wasn't discussed, I would have owned it and stayed until 3. That's true. Like, I would have done that as well. I would have realized that, "Hey, I didn't I missed it," right? Because as a planner, you should know what you're supposed to do, because that is what
Right.
your expertise is. So, I probably would not have had a fight about it. I would have stayed myself. But again, sometimes you just gotta stand your ground, but, that's the
Yeah,
truth of them.
yeah.
It says, "We are there to manage, but we" oh, this is from you. Okay, great. So, all right, so how can I protect the intellectual property associated with my events? Event names, logos, themes, things like that.
Well, are we talking about, like, your company name, or what do you mean when you say event names?
Well, I think it's like, I mean, it can be both, but I think it says event names. So, but I think it can be both.
Okay, so do you like how I do my interviews on a couch so I can just get crisscross
I've been
applesauce when it
trying to
comes to
cross my leg and I'm like, but my desk is too short or my legs are
Yeah.
too big, which I don't have, but I can't cross my leg. I need to change my seat as well. I think it's
Yeah, do
great.
a different
I love
setup.
it.
Okay, so when it comes to the IP stuff, if we're talking about protecting your company's brand, right? So
Yeah,
there's two different things. There's protecting
right.
your company's brand, that's trademark. And then there's protecting your company's intellectual property or work product, that's copyright.
Yep.
So you have if you have a like a company name that you want to put your stamp on, you don't want other people to use it, you don't want other people to tell you that you can't use it, you need to trademark your name, right? So for most service providers, that's about it. For folks like you and me, Annette, like once you start having online courses, memberships, different programs, we also want to trademark those program names.
Yes.
Same thing if you're selling products. For copyright, generally speaking, in the, event and wedding industry, this isn't like a huge kinda concern. If you're a photographer, you definitely wanna think about copyright when it comes to that kinda work product.
Yeah.
But otherwise, unless you have, like, a super unique way that you do timelines or something and you wanna,
Yeah. I
like,
know. It's like
copyright those, I can't really.
yeah, I mean, our services are services, right? So, I mean,
Right.
there's only so many ways you can write what you do in your services. So, even when I'm coaching, I say, when I'm helping people put their websites together, I said, go to my website, that my services are listed there, and get some inspiration.
Yeah.
Listen, at
Yeah.
the end of the day, it's we all write the same darn thing, so it's the same,
Yeah, and you can't really copyright like ideas and concepts, but you
right?
can copyright your words, right? So if someone goes to your website and they like directly like they just copy paste,
Right?
then that's a copyright violation. And you can definitely it's also that's like bad for SEO for both you and them. So you just tell them
Yeah,
like, no, you can't do
yeah,
that.
yeah. I actually I hired somebody once to help me with something,
Oh God.
and they copied somebody else, and she was, like, someone that I knew, a colleague, and they copied someone else, and she saw it, and she was really mad at me, and I was like, "Oh my god," I was mortified, and I
Mhm.
fired that person, and I
Uh-huh.
immediately took down what it was. I thought the person came up with this clever like, I think it was part of, like, of my bio or something like that. They were writing my
Yikes.
bio or something, and they copied it from a person I knew who knew me and was following me and saw it, and I was mortified. So, I ended up having to fire that person
Yeah,
because
that's where I've never done this before, but it might not be a bad idea. They have those online tools where you can like copy and paste stuff in and it'll
yeah,
scrub the internet to see if it's out there. I
yep,
mean, I would hope that we wouldn't all have to like audit the work of people we're hiring, but it might
yeah,
not be a bad idea. Like if you
yeah.
hire someone to write an entire website for you, maybe just like drop in a couple a couple chunks. I don't know.
I know, I know. So, but with AI now, they write everything. So, I mean, how many? I'm sure they're telling everybody the same thing. So who knows?
I know, right?
So, but also too about this trademark. So I've heard that you can just use the trademark symbol, and that's still good enough to trademark like a name or a phrase or something like that. I know you have to go the legal step, but
Yeah.
does that still like I hear that it sort of I don't know how what the wording is on that, but is that true? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean it doesn't really do a whole lot for you, but what we're talking about is you when you put TM beside your name, it just lets people know that that's yours and they shouldn't be
Yeah.
taking it. But
Right,
when we talk about like getting a trademark or filing a trademark, what we're actually talking about is registering your trademark with the United States Patent and Trademark Office.
right.
Once you get approved, and it's kind of a lengthy process to give everyone some context, I filed 5 trademarks last March, and we just started hearing back from those, like, last week.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
Um, so that's
yeah,
about how the timeline works.
yeah.
Once you get approved through that process, you can use the R with the circle, and that's where people
Mhm.
know that you have a trademark registered, and that gives you all of the benefits that just, like, the TM does not.
Right, right. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
the TM really puts people on notice, like, that you are now so if you came up with a new program name, you can put the TM beside it, and then you would have logged, like, "Okay, on January 18th, 2024, I started using the TM."
Right,
So then you can register your trademark at a later date, but you kinda have proof of that first use, which is important, and also it's supposed to publicly notify other people that you're now using that name. Kinda
right.
complicated, but yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. That's what I heard years and years ago in my legal days. Okay, so here's this question about employees versus contractors. How can I ensure that I'm correctly classifying workers as 1099 independent contractors rather than employees?
So you have to look into the laws in your state, and I also wanna do a reframe on this question because the way the question is phrased makes it seem like as long as you correctly 1099 them, it's fine. No, that's not the case. So it has to do with what your state laws are and what we say the worker because the worker is a neutral term for someone
Mhm.
for whom we haven't determined if they're a contractor or an employee. You have
Right,
to determine what the worker is doing, and based on your state law, that will govern whether they can be a contractor or whether they have to be an employee.
right.
So if law dictates that someone should be an employee and you have them sign an independent contractor agreement and they say it's fine and you 1099 them and you do all the things, no, still technically not okay. You can get audited for that and end up owing back payroll taxes, interest, and penalties.
Yes. So this happened to me when I first started my business. I had someone working for me like very part-time. She had other things. She was an event planner and she had other clients and she was doing her own thing and she's very part-time. So I had decided that I wanted to have ADP, which is a payroll company, just handle all my payments for my 1099s. And I only had a few
Uh-huh.
at the time. Now I have many more, but at the time I only had a few. And so I didn't want to deal with all that. And so ADP did not contact me about setting up the workers' comp. And I had tried to reach out to someone several times to say, what do I need to do? And no one returned my call. But in the meantime, I was getting notices from because I put all the paperwork in through ADP and they found that, oh, Annette Naif has a business. So we're going to now make sure she's legal. They sent me this paperwork in New York. So I'm in New York, very strict in New York, lots of laws. And so I had an accountant at the time who told me it doesn't relate to you. He was out of Colorado, unfortunately, because he didn't know the New York laws. He said it doesn't relate to you, so just ignore it. So I ignored it and I ignored it for 6 months. I know you're like cringing. You know what's about to happen here. So I ignored it thinking it doesn't relate to me. And there was this packet of like 30 pages. It's really, really scary when you get it, but I'm
Yeah.
used to it. At that time, I was very used to it after I realized what was going on. But it was very, very, very scary. But he said, doesn't relate to you, ignore it. So I ignored it and I threw him away for 6 months. Finally, I get an invoice for $60,000
Yeah.
on
Yikes.
on this, and I'm like, "Oh shit, I I need to get a lawyer. I need to get a lawyer now. Like this is not good." So I did my due diligence. I, contacted like 5 different lawyers, and each one of them said it's going to run you about ten to $30,000 to fight this. And I thought, okay, it's going to be 30,000 if that's what they say, because I kind of had the legal.
Right.
So I figured it's going to be 30. So I found someone that said it'll be like 7 to 10,000. He was on Long Island. And so I thought, okay, I can deal with this. So it took many, many years and actually, I think during COVID, I mean, this was years ago. This was like 6, 7 years before COVID, and it still wasn't settled for whatever reason. They were still doing like back and forth. It was on one employee or one contractor who I paid $5,000 to for the year. That was it. It was only
Jesus.
5,000. And
Yeah.
because she didn't have a website, they said and then I wrote her a good reference on LinkedIn. They went to LinkedIn, looked at her LinkedIn, and I gave her a reference, which sounded like she was an employee, but it wasn't. It didn't say that, I gave
Uh-huh.
her a reference. They counted that as looking like she was an employee. I only ended up paying about $6,000, like 10%. After years of this, it did cost me probably altogether about $20,000 at the lawyers
Jesus.
and her. So I was, then you get audited. Well, you're always audited every year anyway, which was no big deal because then I was legit. So what I thought was a 1099 employee was not. And so definitely this is a good reminder to make sure you check what the rules are in your state. It was a nightmare. And I only paid her 5 grand for the year and it ended up costing me like 20. So
Yeah.
it was a sad situation that someone just came after me but it is what it is. I got lots of
Yeah,
other
this is why I always have to clarify for people. It's very important. We have contractors get 1099s, employees get W-2s. So
correct.
you either have a 1099 contractor or you have an employee and you have to determine what they can be. Now, in California, I can tell you, like, you pretty much day of assistance cannot be contractors here, the way the law is written. They just can't be. I would venture to guess that only 1 to 5% of business owners are actually doing that properly.
Yeah,
So I wouldn't be surprised if our state just starts like auditing swaths of people for this in the coming
yeah.
years. We had a photographer here who was audited by the EDD for a second shooter that they paid, I think, 500 to $1,000 to. And we ended up like fighting that one and overcoming it, but it was, yeah, a pain in the ass.
So what's your advice for, obviously every state's different, but what's your advice for someone who's starting and can't afford employees and needs to hire someone to come on site and help them? I mean,
Well,
what's
we have okay, let me see if this is currently on our website because it was. I think we still sell it. We have something on our website called, let's see. Yeah, contractor classification cheat sheet. So if anyone goes to notavglaw.com, you can click the everything button and one of our it's $10. And what that is it's a Google Doc we put together that has a summary of the contractor laws in all 50 states.
wow,
So you
that's
can figure out
amazing.
what the rules are. Yeah, you can figure out and what's important is you need to know what the rule is in the place where you're hiring the person. So most of the time in the event industry, all of your people are going to be in your state. But my entire team is virtual. So if you live in New York and have a
Yeah,
virtual assistant
yeah. My
in
whole team's
Virginia, you need to know
virtual.
what the Virginia law is.
I think I have one person in New York. My whole team is all over the place. So it that does kind of happen. But that's a
Yeah.
really great
So you gotta
tool.
you gotta look at all of
Yeah, go
Yeah, you
ahead.
gotta look at all of those laws, analyze whether the person needs to be an employee or not, and then if they do need to be an employee, I always just recommend working with an HR, like an independent HR professional to make sure that you hire them properly and appropriately.
But you can also hire a staffing company that has all of, right? So you can use a staffing company that already has all their legal stuff together, correct?
You could. I mean, I don't know. I'm not really as familiar with that. Like, I
Yeah.
hired an HR consultant, and she helped me do all of they drafted our employee handbook and wrote all of our policies and helped us do all that kind of stuff.
And so that's great. And what is the website again? Because I want to make sure we have it correct. It's not avglaw.com, right?
Yeah,
It's
it's
Yeah,
correct.
okay, we got it. Okay. Thanks. Thanks, Christy, for adding that. Christy added that to the chat. Okay, good. Okay, so yeah, so that's something that's really scary, but you just kind of have to know. And that's a really great tool. And I'm actually gonna recommend that to all of my coaching clients to have them go over there and check out
Great.
all of your good stuff for legal, because that's really great to have. And it's affordable. So, that's where we're at is I don't want them to spend a lot of money, but I want them to be protected.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are some of your best tips for handling tax season?
Well, you gotta have your bookkeeping done. That's the number one thing, right? Doesn't matter who you hire or how you wanna do your tax return. We can't do your taxes if we don't know how much money you made and how much money you spent on your business. So you gotta get your bookkeeping done. If you're making a profit, you probably need to be paying quarterly taxes. That's important. And you gotta file your tax returns.
Yes, you must stay on top of that. Okay, so I do a lightning round at the end, and I would like to ask you a few questions. So, who is someone who's inspiring you at the moment and why?
Oh, inspiring me at the present moment. That's a tough one. Um, I would say, well, right now I'm gearing up for the CrossFit Open. So
Mm.
I'm a weightlifter and CrossFitter, and I just joined a new coaching program. So I would say the person who runs that is
Oh,
mentoring me through my fitness journey right now.
awesome. Good luck with that. I myself just hired a new coach for doing macros and
Oh,
following the
nice.
whole thing and lifting weights, which I've been doing a long time, but I'm trying to fine tune it. It's always an adventure with that. Okay, so what is the best advice you've ever received?
These are like hot seat questions. I've had a lot of good advice, but the first one that's gonna come to mind right now is just last year, I had a friend tell me that I need to stop worrying about I'm always really focused on how I'm gonna scale certain things in my business. So how do I make this scalable? Like when I'm creating the offer, and she said, "You need to
Right.
stop worrying about that, and you just figure out, like, how to sell the thing first and how to deliver it, and you can fine tune it later."
Very good advice. Yes, I'm kind of that same way, looking at the long term here. So what are you most looking forward to this year?
From our business perspective, we are really working on some of our monthly services. So our monthly like tax strategy, bookkeeping, and legal retainer services. So excited to see how that goes.
Mhm.
From a personal perspective, we're in the process of planning a big vacation, but I don't know where that's going to be yet.
Nice, nice. We're going to Italy for 2
Ooh.
weeks in September, so I'm excited for that too. I went last year, but we're going to different places now. All right. So, what's your favorite tool that you use in your business?
Favorite tool, Zoom. I don't know if Zoom is my favorite tool, but it's probably what I
That's a
use the
good
most
one.
often.
Yeah.
I also just started using a tool called Enji, Enji, and it's essentially like it's a marketing platform. My friend Taylor founded it. So after I hop off this call, I actually have to get in there to put in some KPIs. So that'll be
Oh,
fun too.
fun, fun. I'm, into this Chat GPT thing right now,
Oh
so
yeah. Mhm.
I've been using that. Okay, so last question. What's one piece of advice you'd give to wedding or event planners just starting out?
Pay your taxes.
I figured it.
We run a program called Unfuck Your Biz, and it's called that because a lot of the people that we work with are behind on their taxes because they didn't pay their quarterly taxes when they started out making money in their business. So pay your
Yeah.
taxes.
Yes, pay your taxes. Well, thank you so much, Braden, for joining us. It's such a bigger conversation, and you always have such great advice. I've listened to you before, and you're so wonderful. And thank you so much for being here and sharing this with everyone. And I'm going to, share your website and stuff with my coaching clients, and so you'll be expecting to see that. How can people reach you?
So check out our website, which we already linked and mentioned. You can follow us on Instagram at not ABG Law. It's on my shirt for the Not Your Average Law Firm. And then we also have a Facebook group. Braden's Besties is the name of that. And if you are an avid podcast listener, go search for Unfuck Your Biz with Braden. Just put the asterisk for the U when you search for it.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. Really love having you. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll be back next week. Have a great day. Take care.